Empire of Silence by Christopher Rucchio. This is going to be a full in-depth review without getting into any spoilers. And before I get started, I do want to say, some of this is going to feel like I am ranting, and that I do not think that Christopher Rucchio is a great writer. But I want to make clear that Christopher Rucchio is a good author. And even though I didn't like this book, it is very impressive in its own right. But I just really did not care for this book. And I think kind of the difference between thinking someone can be a good author between like thinking the book is not good is the fact that I think Christopher Rucchio was still able to write a beautiful prose, create a great character, and tell a story in a way that makes sense and comes to life to his readers, which I do think he succeeds with. I just didn't like the book because it read to me like fan fiction. But let me start from the beginning. Empire of Silence is the story of a son of a noble house fleeing away from his family because he doesn't want to be forced into a career he's not interested in. He ends up on a strange planet where he's forced to fight as a gladiator and ends up encountering an alien creature he's supposed to hate, but will set him on the path to where he becomes a man who destroys the sun. That's my summary. If you want the publishers, you can read the back of the book. If you watch my mid-year wrap-up where I review, rate, and rank every book I've read so far this year, you'll know that this was one of my most anticipated books of the year. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. But this was one of my most anticipated reads because BookTuber cited this as one of their favorite science fiction stories of all time. They kind of described it as a mix of Dune and Name of the Wind. But this book took me over a month to even finish. And where I was promised the beginning of an epic science fiction that was inspired by Dune and Name of the Wind, what I actually got was fan fiction of Dune and Book of the New Sun. And I think there is a difference between inspired and what this is. Because there are literal elements of Dune that are picked up, taken out, and put directly into this story. And I'm going to name a few. I have them written down. Both stories have a planet that the entire system relies on. Empire of Silence has shield belts that function, act, and that are complete imitations of the shield belts from Dune. Instead of mentats, they have scolias. They have homunculi, which are brought into picture in Dune Messiah. And then even quotes. So fear is the mind killer is from Dune. Rucchio's is rage is blindness. And I understand paying homage to like your favorite authors, but this is a little different. And I want to be clear. I do not think this is plagiarism, but it's not wholly original either. And all it did was make me keep thinking about Dune. I do think that the similarities between it and the Book of the New Sun, of which I've only read Shadow of the Torturer so far, I do think those similarities are much better done. They are more inspired than imitation, but I do want to show you a few similarities I found between Shadow of the Torturer and Empire of Silence. And the first one is the Chantry. It's very similar to the Torturers Guild in Book of the New Sun. They both have first-person unreliable narrators, which is like a huge, huge thing in Book of the New Sun. And then even the quotes themselves. I wrote down some of these quotes. This one is from Empire of Silence. If what I have done disturbs you, reader, I do not blame you. If you would read no further, I understand. You have the luxury of foresight. You know where this ends. I shall go on alone. And this one is from Shadow of the Torturer. Here I pause. If you wish to walk no farther with me, reader, I cannot blame you. It is no easy road. Again, from Silence. We think ourselves the masters of such symbols, but they are our masters. From Shadow. We believe that we invent symbols. The truth is they invent us. We are their creatures, shaped by their hard, defining edges. And the last one I want to bring up is this one. The arch that led me into the rotunda beneath the dome of bright carving stands forever in my mind, imperishable as a symbol of my failure. That was from Silence. The locked and rusted gate that stood before us with wisps of river fog, threading the spikes like mountain paths, remains in my mind now as the symbol of my exile. And those are just a bare minimum. Like if you went through and like you would have to know both of these books so well to point all of those out, but you see the similarities. And like I said, he does a much better job with his homage to the Book of the New Sun than he does with Dune, but it's still just kind of Like, this book is essentially a sci-fi enthusiast trying to come up with his own story that has Easter eggs of all his favorite books throughout his own story. And it's really cool if you think about it. But when the whole book becomes an Easter egg, it's not fun anymore. It takes the enjoyment of finding the little Easter eggs there are. And as someone who hasn't finished the Dune trilogy or all the trilogies after that, and as someone who hasn't finished the Book of the New Sun, I wasn't able to enjoy this book because it kept making me want to go back and read those stories. I hadn't finished the masterpieces that inspired this book, so why am I reading this book? I just wasn't able to appreciate what Christopher Rucchio was doing because I was still so involved with its predecessors. And I do want to point out some positive things. The first being his great prose and writing skills. You can tell the effort he puts into his books, even though it is a mixed match of a bunch of his favorite stories from childhood. It kind of reminds me of that quote from Newton, where he says something like, "If I have seen far, it is because I have stood on the shoulder of giants." And I kind of see this author as the same way. Like, he's doing really well because of the people that came before him. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he is doing well. Yes, he is borrowing, but he's creating something good for himself. The second positive thing is, and I didn't know this before, but the author is apparently a booktuber. He's got his own booktube channel, and apparently he addresses all these similarities in his discussions about the book. He talks about how all this was very purposeful and his intent behind adding these things in there. He's not good-kinding this and saying, like, no, these aren't similarities, and if you see similarities, you're dumb. He outright acknowledges what he's doing, and he sees it as a sort of homage. And I haven't watched these videos for myself. This is from what I get from other booktubers talking about his channel. I am going to subscribe to his channel and watch some of those videos of his explaining, because I was hesitant at first because I didn't want spoilers, but based off of how little I like this book and how many other great books I have to read before then, I do want to hear the author talk about this himself, and I'm not afraid of spoilers anymore because I may never finish this series. And the third good thing I want to mention is that every single booktuber mentions how this first book is the most rough. It has the most similarities to other books, and it is the beginning point for an epic science fiction space opera that becomes its own. So that was the third good thing about it. But I honestly wonder if that's the case, because my original pass through, I thought that last third of the book was starting to become like a really original story. But the more I read of Shadow and Claw, the more I see he's pulled stuff from the Book of the New Sun. So I wonder if the story really does become original, or if it's still just one big Easter egg. And if you haven't read those books, then you can't pick up on the similarities between the two. But in summary, Christopher Rucchio's writing is beautiful with deepness, skill, and prose that literally pays homage to those greats that came before him. But this first book just did not do it for me. The story was overshadowed by his inspirations, and since I haven't finished them, I couldn't enjoy this book. I would rather reread the Book of the New Sun, plus all 2,000 plus hours of podcasts that discuss the Book of the New Sun, before I have interest in continuing on this journey. If all the channels I watch are correct, the book gets better from here, or the series gets better after this book. But until I finish the Dune series and the Book of the New Sun, I cannot even think about continuing this series. So all in all, I'm rating this book 2 out of 5 stars. And with that, this review comes to an end. I will be posting a review of The Shadow of the Torture, which is the book that I see so many similarities between this book and that book. So if you want to check that out, like and subscribe to get notified when that video drops. And until next time, I hope you're out there reading cool new books and exploring strange new worlds. And I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.